In this lesson, we're going to continue working on our 2D avatar by adding some line work to our sketch. So let's go ahead and dive right back in. So in the previous lesson, we fleshed out our sketch based off of our photo reference of our kind of goofy looking, silly looking nerd guy over here. And we also decided to go ahead and add a shocked expression as well. So we can kind of see that on its own layer there. And we're going to save this shocked expression so we can work in an additional secondary expression later on in a later lesson. So let's go ahead and hide the visibility of our shocked sketch layer. And we're going to go ahead and turn the visibility back on for our sketch layer. And you'll notice I've created a new layer above this which I've titled line work. So this is where we're going to be adding our line work over our rough sketch lines that we've added in the previous lesson. So before we go forward, let's go ahead with our sketch layer selected in our layers panel. Let's bring down the opacity to around 50%. And we'll go ahead and click on our line work layer. And again, I'm just reducing the opacity of my sketch layer just so I can kind of differentiate between my line work and my sketch lines when applying my clean line work. So I'm going to go over here to my tool panel, and I'm going to just go ahead and hit this little butt icon right here, and this will just take me to a black color to apply my line work. So just zooming in. Now I may want to go ahead and adjust my brush tip. I'm going to switch to a hard round brush, and going over here to my brush panel, I'm going to turn on shape dynamics, again making sure I got pressure sensitivity by having pen pressure selected for my brush tip size, and we'll go ahead and turn on transfer as well, again making sure I've got pen pressure applied to both opacity and flow. Now I'm basically going to be adding a cleaner layer of line work, and we're going to explore how to keep our lines relatively fine and clean. We don't want them to get too thick in certain areas, just because as we shrink down the avatar, it may get a little rough, or get a little muddy rather. Now I'm not going to worry about my lines being absolutely pristine. I just want them to look a lot cleaner than that rough, sketchy line work I had below. We're not going to worry about it being 100% perfectly crisp, because as we zoom out, just zooming out real quick and unchecking the visibility rather for our sketch layer, we can see that that line is going to clearly be a lot cleaner than the rough, sketchy line beneath. So just zooming back in, we'll go ahead and resume on this ear right here, the screen left ear. Just kind of going over our sketch layer. Now there are certain areas where you may want to concentrate on having a little thicker line. So we're going to be kind of concentrating and thinking about line weight of our line work. Now, if you have an area where your line work gets a little thicker, that's to really help convey or add to depth or rolling of the skin, rolling of a particular facial feature. So adding kind of a thicker line around these nostrils will kind of help the illusion that this area kind of rolls, kind of gives a little bit of depth and dimension. But again, we're going to be very careful about how thick our line work gets. We don't want really, really thick line work because it'll get really muddy shrunken down. So I'm just coming around the mouth here. Just working in my line work. Now in a later lesson, as I mentioned before, we're going to take that shocked sketch expression and we're going to use that as a guide to modify our line work that we're adding right now for a different expression. So that's why we went ahead and did that additional rough sketch for an extra expression. As I mentioned in the first lesson, a lot of avatars come stocked with an array of expressions that a user can cycle through to just convey their overall mood. They may be different moods they may be experiencing in a game, for example. So you'll notice I'm getting my lines a little thicker right here just to really show these prominent smile lines that he has. So if we go ahead and zoom out, we can see how that registers at a small size. And so that's looking pretty nice. And just coming around to these teeth here. And I'm keeping the teeth pretty much one singular simple shape. I wouldn't want to go in and try to work in each individual tooth, because if we were to shrink that down, that just won't register well. In fact, we could just for demonstration, trying to work in each individual tooth just really quickly here. And if we zoom way out, it just starts to kind of run together. So let's just go ahead and I'm hitting Control-Alt-Z just so we can do multiple step backs just to undo that, because we don't want our teeth on our avatar to look like that. So this comes back to what I was saying in a previous lesson, just simplifying certain things, kind of like we did with the tongue, sketching it out. We want to simplify certain elements, facial elements, so that they read well when it's shrunken down. So having good clean line work that isn't too intense, isn't too thick, is going to complement the colors and values that we'll begin painting in a later lesson. So just coming around this chin here, I probably want my line weight to be a little bit thicker, just to kind of give the illusion that that chin's got a little bit of dimension and depth, that it kind of rolls right there at the bottom. And we may want to make this wrinkle line right here. Again, he's kind of pushing his head back into his neck. So having that line just a little thicker right there, just to give that illusion that that's a prominent wrinkle, a prominent smile line. Let's go ahead and work on this screen right eye here. And again, I don't want my line work to be too thick in this area as well. Especially something like the eyes, it could definitely cloudy up the eye quite a bit. So just working on the pupil here, we'll go ahead and fill that in. Very nice. And again, I've kept these lines. I don't have a whole lot of wrinkles. You know, if we were to zoom, let's just go ahead and click on this tab over here. If we were to zoom way in, really way in, we can see a lot of little specific little wrinkles here and there. And so we don't want to get too detailed with our line work, because again, those won't read well when our avatar is shrunken down. So we're just coming around and addressing this screen left eye. Once again, just pretty much how we approach the screen right eye. Very good. And just these eyelids right here. Very nice. And we'll go ahead and come up and let's go ahead and finish out this screen right ear that we kind of started to work on. And as I mentioned in the previous lesson, I made sure to kind of straighten out a few elements that were, his head was kind of turned or tilted a little towards the screen right. And so I wanted that screen right ear to just register a little bit better when we shrink our avatar down. So just shrinking it down, we can see both ears clearly. If we had left it to where we only saw part of that ear, kind of like we have in our reference photo here, it just might come off as a little bit confusing in our avatar. So again, these are just some things to consider when you're designing your own avatar. And just coming around, working around the line work for our hair. And you'll notice, see right here, like my line is not perfectly, it's not super perfect. And I'm not worrying about it being absolutely pristine once again. This isn't something that's going to be seen up super close. But if we just zoom out and once again uncheck the visibility for our sketch layer, we can see that the line work looks a lot cleaner, looks a lot more crisp. So really, we're at a point now I can continue on, basically finishing out my line work and just going around all of my sketch layer. What we're going to do in the next lesson is begin creating a color palette and applying some base colors for our 2D avatar. So we'll see you then.